I felt the room shift before Gerald even opened his mouth. It was slide 15, financial projections. The part of the deck I'd spent the most time on, the part I knew cold, the part where I usually saw clients lean forward in their chairs, and I was right on track. 23 minutes in, the Crestline team had been engaged the whole time, asking good questions, nodding at the right moments. Gerald Lawson, their VP of Operations, had been following along closely since the first slide. Then I caught Harlan's reflection in the conference room glass. He'd shifted in his seat and leaned toward Gerald. Whatever he whispered lasted maybe 10 seconds. But I watched Gerald's face change right in front of me. Interest became concern became something colder and more decided. Around the table, the other Crestline reps picked up on it too. Bodies tensed, eyes dropped. Gerald stood up, smoothed his jacket, didn't look at me. We've decided to terminate your contract. The room went dead quiet. May I ask why? My voice came out steadier than I had any right to expect. Gerald glanced at Harlan before answering. Your supervisor shared some concerns with us. He's convinced us you're unreliable. A project of this size requires consistency, and we've been told that's become an issue. Harlan rose from his chair. He straightened his tie slowly, the way a man does when he wants everyone in the room watching him. I tried to warn you about this, Dale. Leadership had real doubts, but I pushed for giving you the shot. He shook his head, genuine seeming disappointment, almost respectful in how well he performed it. I'm sorry it ended this way. 7 people were staring at me. I closed my laptop, picked up my bag, took my time doing both. My hands wanted to move fast. I made them slow down. I was not going to stand there and rush while Harlan watched. When I reached the door, I turned back. I looked at Harlan first, then at Gerald. By the way, I said, check your inbox. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out and let the door close behind me. But in the half second before it did, I caught it. Harlan reaching for his phone with a speed that didn't match the confidence he'd been performing all morning. That was the crack I'd been waiting for. My name is Dale Mercer. I'm 57 years old, Senior Business Development Manager, 14 years at the same firm. The Crestline Manufacturing Group account was worth $240 a year, and it was, without question, the biggest deal of my career. I had 3 years left before I planned to retire. I wanted to go out on something that meant something. This was supposed to be it. Standing in that hallway, I had one thought. The game was still going. I just had to hold my nerve. Let me go back 8 months. Harlan Cross came in as the new department VP after a career at one of our biggest competitors. His reputation arrived before he did. Turnaround specialist. Big results, strong on team development. Our CEO, Paula Whitfield, was visibly pleased to have landed him. In my first one-on-one with Harlan, he reviewed my portfolio, asked smart questions, and told me I was exactly the kind of producer he wanted to build the department around. I believed him for about 2 weeks. The first sign came at a leadership strategy meeting. I'd spent 3 weeks building a market analysis on a manufacturing sector that most of our competitors hadn't touched yet. The numbers were solid. The opportunity was real and specific. I showed the full analysis to Harlan the day before, and he told me to present it to the group. He opened the meeting before I could. He walked leadership through my entire analysis. My research, my data pulls, my sector breakdown, my conclusions presented as his own breakthrough thinking. When he finished, he turned to me with a pleasant expression. Dale, I think you had some additional thoughts to share. What was I supposed to say? That he'd lifted my work word for word. Without proof, with a room full of people who just watched the new VP receive praise from the CEO, I'd have looked paranoid and sore. I presented something I'd put together as a backup on a different topic and sat through the rest of the meeting listening to people congratulate Harlan on his market foresight. I drove home that night telling myself it was a one-time thing. A miscommunication, maybe even a test. It wasn't. Over the following months, a pattern took shape with a precision that took me a while to recognize. Projects I was leading would hit walls that hadn't been there before. Resources promised to me would disappear without explanation. Key information would reach me late enough to make me miss deadlines I'd never missed in 14 years of clean performance reviews. Every time I stumbled, Harlan would appear to fix it, and he'd get the credit for both the problem and the solution. My ideas would get dismissed in meetings. 2 weeks later, the same ideas would come out of Harlan's mouth, slightly repackaged, and leadership would nod along. When I tried to raise any of this with him, he'd look at me with what I can only describe as carefully managed sympathy and suggest I was misremembering the timeline. By month 4, my performance reviews, which had been strong for 14 straight years, were showing consistency issues and communication problems. The exact things I'd built my reputation on. I thought about resigning. I had 3 years until I planned to retire. I'd put in 14 years at this firm. I didn't need to spend my last stretch fighting a political war with a guy who was better at politics than I was. The easier move was to walk away clean, take whatever package they offered, and go. But something kept pulling me back. The precision of it bothered me. Bad luck doesn't have a pattern. Normal workplace friction doesn't hit the same person in the same spots every single time. The way resources disappeared exactly when I needed them, the way deadlines shifted by just enough to make me look bad but not enough to be obviously sabotaged, the way my ideas kept resurfacing in Harlan's mouth 2 weeks after he dismissed them in meetings. That wasn't friction, that was engineering. One evening about 5 months in, I was working late in an otherwise empty office when Roy Pittman stopped by my desk. Roy was our IT director. He'd been with the company 16 years, long enough to have outlasted 4 different leadership regimes. We weren't close, but we had a solid working relationship built on mutual respect and the fact that neither of us wasted the other's time. He stopped, looked at me for a moment, then glanced down the hallway before lowering his voice. "You still here, Dale?" Apparently, I said. He was quiet for a second. Then, "I've seen this movie before. Different cast, same script. New leader comes in, identifies whoever's most likely to outshine him, and starts the clock on pushing them out. Takes their work, isolates them from support, lets the small failures accumulate until the reputation does the rest." He paused. Harlan ran this exact play at 2 companies before this one. IT people talk across companies. We see the pattern because we see the logs. I asked him how he knew it was the same situation. Because the people who usually come after him don't see it until it's too late. They're too busy trying to prove themselves. He tapped my desk twice. "Just think carefully about who benefits most from your current run of bad luck, and maybe consider what you're putting in writing and what you're not." He walked away. No drama, no follow-up. Just that. I sat at my desk for a long time after he left. Up until that point, I'd been playing defense. Trying to protect my reputation, trying to document my output, trying to prove I was still reliable, but Harlan wasn't attacking my output. He was attacking the perception of my output, which was a completely different problem and one that documentation alone couldn't fix. You can't win an argument about perception by showing people spreadsheets. Perception changes when the right people have the right experience. That night, I stopped thinking about defense and started thinking about what winning actually looked like. The plan I came up with had 2 parts and required more patience than I was comfortable with. The first part was about records. Starting the next morning, I began copying Roy on every project update I sent out. Status reports, resource requests, timeline confirmations, any communication that touched a deliverable. I kept it routine, nothing that looked strategic. What it created without anyone noticing was a time-stamped record sitting in the IT system of every resource that got pulled from my projects, every deadline that shifted, every obstacle that materialized out of nowhere. Roy never commented on it. He didn't need to. The log was building itself. The second part was about Crestline. I'd been cultivating that relationship for almost a year, and the groundwork I'd laid there was the kind you can't fake. I hadn't just dealt with Gerald at the VP level. I'd made myself useful to the people who actually worked with our output day-to-day, Randall Voss in logistics, Nadine Burrell in finance, the implementation team leads. When they had questions, I answered them. When I made a recommendation, I took the time to explain the reasoning behind it rather than just handing down a directive. Randall told me once, "You're the only consultant who explains the why. Everyone else just tells us what to do and expects us to figure out the rest." I hadn't built those relationships strategically. I'd built them because that's how I've always worked. But now they were going to matter in a way I hadn't anticipated when I started. When Harlan announced he'd be attending my Crestline presentation, despite having criticized the entire approach at every planning meeting, I knew exactly what he intended to do. He'd used this move before. Show up to someone else's meeting, undermine the presenter in front of the client at the right moment, and position himself as the steady hand in a difficult situation. He'd be the one who'd had concerns all along. He'd be the one leadership should have trusted from the start. The night before the presentation, I sent a short message to both Gerald and Nadine. No explanation, no context, no hint at what I was expecting. Just one question. If tomorrow you hear unexpected claims about my professional reliability, do you trust your own direct experience with me enough to question those claims? That was it. I sent it and went to bed. I didn't sleep well, but I'd done what I could do. The rest was going to depend on whether the relationships I'd built were real or just professional courtesy. By morning, I was about to find out. The morning of the presentation, Harlan caught me in the hallway outside the elevator bank. "Big day," he said. He had his jacket on already, cufflinks straightened, the whole picture of a man completely at ease. "Nervous?" "Not at all," I told him. "I'm prepared." His smile tightened just slightly at the edges. Remember, this is a critical account. The firm is counting on a strong result here. If you feel overwhelmed at any point, I'm happy to step in and support. I appreciate that, I said, and I meant it, just not the way he intended. The drive over, I ran through the deck one more time in my head. I'd built it over 4 months. Every number sourced, every projection conservative enough to survive a hard question, every slide sequenced so the story built naturally toward the financials at the end. Slide 15 was the strongest part of the whole presentation. That's where the case became undeniable. That's also I knew exactly where Harlan would make his move. The first 20 minutes went the way I'd planned. The Crestline team was engaged. Gerald was asking real questions, the kind that meant he was tracking the logic and buying in. Randall caught my eye once from the far end of the table and gave me a small nod. Even the 2 reps I didn't know as well were leaning forward by slide 12. I could see Harlan getting tense. He'd come in expecting to rescue a stumbling presentation. Instead, he was sitting through a good one, and with every slide that landed cleanly, his window was getting smaller. By slide 14, his posture had changed. He was watching the room instead of the screen. I advanced to slide 15. I kept talking, kept my voice steady, kept my eyes moving around the table the way you do when you want to hold a room. And in the reflection of the glass wall to my left, I watched Harlan lean toward Gerald. His expression shifted into something practiced and concerned. Gerald listened for about 10 seconds. His face changed. A few minutes later, Gerald stood up. I let him finish the whole thing. The terminated contract, the concerns about reliability, the need for consistency on a project of this magnitude. Then I let Harlan stand up and deliver his performance, the reluctant supervisor, the man who tried to protect me. The disappointment he felt at how this had turned out. He did it well, I'll give him that. He'd clearly done it before. I closed my laptop, picked up my bag, walked to the door. By the way, check your inbox. I didn't look back, but I heard the shift in the room behind me, and in the last half second before the door closed, I caught Harlan reaching for his phone with a speed that had nothing relaxed about it. I made it to an empty hallway 1 floor down before I stopped walking, leaned against the wall, took a few slow breaths. That was the part of the plan I'd had the least control over. Everything from here depended on whether the people I'd been working with at Crestline would trust their own experience over what they'd just been told. My phone buzzed. Randall Voss, what just happened in there? Gerald is getting messages from half the operations floor. We're calling an emergency session for tomorrow morning. You need to see this thread. He sent screenshots. A conversation had lit up across Crestline's internal channels within an hour of the meeting ending. People who'd worked directly with me over the past year were pushing back, not as a favor, not because anyone had asked them to, but because the version of me they'd just heard described didn't match anyone they recognized. Randall had started it with a single message to the ops team. Has anyone here seen Dale be unreliable? Because I've worked with him for 11 months and I'm not sure we're talking about the same person. The responses came fast, but the message that changed the shape of everything came from Nadine Burrell, Crestline's CFO. She rarely involved herself in vendor matters. That was Gerald's territory, but she sent a message directly to Gerald and the entire Crestline executive team, and she didn't hedge a word of it. I've worked with Dale on 3 separate initiatives over the past year. His analysis has been clean every time, his communication has been clear, and his follow-through has been consistent without exception. What was described in that room today contradicts our direct experience with him completely. I'm requesting we pause this decision until we understand the full picture. By that evening, Gerald had scheduled a formal alignment meeting for 9 the next morning. Both leadership teams, full attendance. I read Nadine's message twice. Then I put my phone down and sat still for a minute. I'd spent 8 months wondering if I'd read the situation right. Wondering if the relationships I'd built at Crestline were real or just the ordinary politeness of a client who didn't want to cause friction. Wondering if, when it actually came down to it, people would speak up or stay quiet. Nadine answered that question. That night, 2 hours before I went to sleep, I pulled together the project log Roy had been quietly accumulating in the IT system for the past 3 months. 8 months of time-stamped records, every resource pull, every deadline shift, every obstacle, no accusations attached, no editorial commentary. Just the data, in order with dates. I forwarded the whole thing to Paula Whitfield with one line, context for tomorrow's meeting. Then I closed my laptop and tried to get some rest. At 4:30 that same afternoon, before I'd even made it home, Paula's assistant called to tell me there was an emergency debrief in the executive conference room. Me, Harlan, Walter Hines from HR, and Paula, 30 minutes. I turned around and drove back. When I walked in, Harlan was already there. He looked composed. Jacket still on, posture easy, the body language of a man who believed he was about to manage a situation he'd managed before. He He glanced at me when I sat down, gave me a small nod, and looked away. Paula opened without small talk. Crestline has requested a formal alignment meeting tomorrow morning at 9,000. Lena Winters called me personally. She looked at both of us. I'd like to understand what happened in that presentation room today, before we walk into that building tomorrow. Harlan went first. He didn't wait to be asked. He laid out his version smoothly and without apparent stress. Performance concerns that had been building for months. A pattern of inconsistency he'd been trying to address privately. His decision to attend the presentation out of responsibility to the account. His genuine regret that things had deteriorated to this point publicly. He was good. I'd watched him work a room before, but sitting across from him in a small conference space, I could see the mechanics of it more clearly. The pauses in the right places. The measured tone that suggested reluctance rather than accusation. The way he framed everything as concern rather than attack. Paula listened without expression. Then she looked at me. I kept it factual. I told her that for 8 months I'd experienced a consistent pattern of resource withdrawal, late information, and shifting deadlines that had no operational explanation. That ideas I brought to internal meetings were dismissed and later presented by Harlan as his own. That my performance reviews had shifted from strong to concerning in areas where my client record showed no corresponding decline. Harlan interrupted with a short laugh. That's a significant allegation without any evidence to support it. I didn't file a formal complaint, I said. I anticipated that without documentation it would look exactly like what you're suggesting, so I documented it differently. Paula looked at me. What does that mean? It means Roy Pittman has a time-stamped log in the IT system covering the past 3 months. Every resource pull, every deadline change, every project update I sent, I copied him on all of it as it happened. I forwarded the full record to you tonight before this meeting. Paula said nothing, but she picked up her phone and looked at it briefly. Harlan's composure shifted. It was small, just a tightening around the jaw, but I'd been watching him long enough to recognize it. Walter from HR asked a few procedural questions. Harlan answered them steadily, back on solid ground. He pointed out correctly that a log of project updates wasn't evidence of deliberate sabotage, that resources get reallocated in any dynamic business environment. That building on shared ideas is part of how departments function. He wasn't wrong that the log alone wouldn't close the case. But the log wasn't the whole case. As the debrief wrapped up, Harlan made one more move. He suggested in a measured and reasonable sounding tone that given the sensitivity of the Crestline situation, it would be better for the account if he led tomorrow's meeting rather than Dale. That putting me forward again so soon after the disruption could make the firm look disorganized, that he could frame it as a leadership decision to provide stability. Paula looked at him for a moment. Then she said, "I'll be leading tomorrow's meeting. Both of you will attend. Neither of you will run it." Harlan nodded like he'd expected that answer. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked out without looking at me. Paula waited until the door closed. Then she said quietly, "Get some rest, Dale. Tomorrow matters." I didn't sleep much. I kept running scenarios, trying to find the holes in what I'd set up, wondering if I'd misjudged something. By 5:30 in the morning, I gave up and got dressed. I was at my desk by 700. At 8:15, Paula stopped by and told me she'd asked Roy to attend the 900 meeting. She'd reviewed the log I'd sent the night before and wanted him present to speak to the record directly if it came up. She didn't editorialize. She just said it and moved on. That was the first moment I let myself think this might actually go the way I'd planned. At 8:45, the Crestline team arrived. Gerald led them in. Randall was there, and Nadine and 4 others from the executive side. They shook hands, took coffee, found seats. Harlan was already at the table, positioned near the head, looking like a man ready to run a meeting. Paula sat at the head instead. Gerald placed a folder on the table in front of him. Nadine had her laptop open. Randall sat at the far end with his arms crossed, watching Harlan with an expression that wasn't hostile, just completely unconvinced. Paula opened at exactly 9. "We're here because something happened yesterday that requires a direct conversation between both organizations. I want to hear from Crestline first. Gerald, you called this meeting. Tell me what you need to understand." Gerald nodded. He opened the folder. "We need to understand," he said, "why your VP was sending me private emails about Dale's competence for 5 weeks before that presentation. On his personal account, without Dale's knowledge, and without mine either for the record, because we never had the conversations those emails reference." He turned the folder around and slid it across the table toward Paula. The room went very quiet. Paula looked at the folder for a long moment, then she looked at Harlan. Harlan's expression had gone still, not calm still. The way a person looks when they're working very hard to not show what's happening inside them. "These were sent from your personal email account," Paula said. "It wasn't a question. I can explain the context." Harlan started. "Gerald just told you he never had the conversations these emails reference." Paula said, So before you explain the context, I'd like to understand what conversations you thought you were referencing. Harlan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Nadine spoke from across the table. Her voice was even and factual, the way a CFO speaks when she's already done the math and is simply presenting results. I'd like to add something. After yesterday's meeting, I asked our operations team a direct question. I wanted to know if anyone who had worked directly with Dale over the past year recognized the description of him as unreliable. She opened her laptop and turned the screen so Paula could see it. 17 people responded. The consistency across those responses is frankly remarkable. Every one of them described the same person: prepared, clear, follows through. Not one of them recognized the version presented in that conference room yesterday. She closed the laptop. Randall spoke up from the end of the table unprompted. I've run logistics on 3 of Dale's projects this year. If I had a problem, he picked up the phone. If something wasn't working, he told me why before I had to ask. That's not a guy who's falling apart under pressure. That's a guy doing the job. Harlan tried again. With respect, external impressions don't always reflect what's happening internally. There are performance issues that a client wouldn't necessarily see. Then let's look at what the internal record shows, Paula said. She nodded to Roy, who was sitting at the far end of the table with his laptop already open. Roy pulled up the log and walked through it without any theatrical presentation, just the facts in order: resource withdrawals with dates, deadline shifts with timestamps. Everyone logged automatically through the CC system Dale had been running for 3 months. The pattern across 8 months was visible to anyone looking at the screen. Harlan's jaw tightened. A log of project communications isn't evidence of anything other than normal operational changes. You're right, Paula said. On its own, it isn't. But paired with emails you sent to a client on a personal account to avoid the company server, actively undermining a team member before a presentation, while describing leadership concerns that leadership never expressed. That's a different picture. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Harlan made one final move. I'll give him credit for nerve, if nothing else. He suggested calmly and with apparent reasonableness that what the firm needed now was stable leadership on the Crestline account, and that he was prepared to step in personally and manage the relationship going forward. He said it like it was a generous offer. Gerald looked at him across the table. That's not something we'd be interested in. Paula stood up. She thanked the Crestline team for coming in, told Gerald she'd be in direct contact about next steps, and asked Harlan to wait in her office. He walked out without looking at anyone. Gerald shook my hand before he left. He didn't say much, just that he was glad they'd paused before making it final. Nadine nodded at me on her way out. Randall said, "See you next week," like none of this had happened, which was exactly the right thing to say. Roy packed up his laptop, caught my eye on his way to the door, and gave me a single nod. That was it. Harlan was escorted out of the building that afternoon. Personal items in a box, security walking alongside him. By evening, Paula had sent a company-wide message announcing his departure. The following morning, she called me into her office and offered me the interim department head position while they ran a formal search. I accepted. A week later, Roy sent me a message. Short, same as always. He ran this play at both companies before this one. You're the first person who outsmarted him instead of breaking under it. Well played. I read it twice, then I put my phone in my pocket and went back to work. Here's what I want you to take from this. I had 3 years left before I planned to retire. I had 14 years of clean work behind me and a reputation I'd built carefully over a long career. Harlan understood that a man with that much to lose is usually too careful to fight back. He was counting on me to protect what I had by staying quiet. What he didn't count on was that I'd spent those same 14 years building something he couldn't touch. Not a title, not a review score. Real relationships with real people who knew the real record. I didn't beat him by outmaneuvering him inside the company. I beat him by changing who got to decide the outcome. When it mattered, I didn't have to say a word. The people I'd actually served said it for me. If you've spent years doing the work right, and someone is trying to use your own reputation against you, don't spend your energy fighting each battle they pick. Spend it making sure the right people know who you actually are. That's not just better strategy. In the end, it's the only kind of win that holds. If this story hit close to home, I'd appreciate a like. It helps more people find it, and drop a comment below. Have you ever had a Harlan in your life? Someone who came in with a big reputation and spent it tearing other people down? How did you handle it? I'd genuinely like to know. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one.